Okay, thank you, Ron and Sylvia, today for that lovely, lovely interlude. Yes, okay, I'm really happy to introduce today's speaker, um, Dr. Marcheta Evans from Bloomfield College. And what Dr. Evans says as about how she advanced in her life to where she is today is that when much is given, much is required. Growing up in the South during the Civil Rights Movement, my grandmother always taught me the value of education. I pursued becoming a college president so that other individuals of color who would come after me could see someone who looked like them in this pinnacle academic leadership position. Being a part of first generation and low income household students earning their college degrees and transforming their lives is how I give back every day for all that I have received. On June 1st, 2019, Marcheta P. Evans, PhD, became the first woman and African American president to lead Bloomfield College, my alma mater, in its 150-year history. She was unanimously selected as the institution's 17th president by the college's Board of Trustees after a nationwide search. Dr. Evans has served in transformational leadership roles in higher education for more than 30 years at both public and private institutions, with the majority at minority-serving institutions. Bloomfield College is the only four-year institution of higher learning in New Jersey designated a predominantly Black institution, a Hispanic-serving institution, and a minority-serving institution. The college was recently ranked the highest private college in the state of New Jersey and number 18 nationally among 210 national liberal arts institutions in the U.S. In U.S. News and World Report's best colleges listing of top performers on social mobility. Dr. Evans, we are so grateful and honored to have you here with us today.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Perfect, perfect. Usually when I say good morning, I always say buenos dias as well. As was mentioned in the introduction, we are a Hispanic serving institution as well as being a predominantly Black institution. Almost 90% of my students are students of color, and I'll talk more about that in just a second. I'm just so happy to be able to join you today. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I had an event last night in Princeton and just got back in early this morning, and I'm still learning how to navigate New Jersey, even though I've been here almost 4 years now. So, my message and what I want to share with you today is a little bit about my life's journey in being of service in our diverse and multicultural world. When we go back and look at the title that I gave, when much is given, much is required, it goes back to honestly me being raised by my grandmother in the 1960s during the civil rights era. My grandmother always taught me the value of education. And matter of fact, we couldn't miss school because if we did, we had to be maybe going to the hospital or about ready to die. Other than that, it was, we had to be in school all the time. And the reason why she would say that it is, baby, you need to do well in school. You need to get your education and go to college, because when you get your education, no one can ever take that from you. They can take your house, your car, the clothes off of your back. But when your mind is free and your mind is educated, no one can take that from you. And the value of that is so important. As a child, these words provided me with hope during a period of great societal unrest, as I mentioned, growing up in Alabama. My grandmother knew even then that a college degree was an opportunity for marginalized people to cross over the poverty line and into a better life. Some of you may know the term upward social economic mobility, Well, this premise continues today as a promise to my students and their families that count on when they send their child to college, that their lives will be transformed. Most people don't know that at Bloomfield College, the median family income for my students is just $32,000. I don't even know how that's even possible living in New Jersey with it being $32,000. The expectation is, though, that once you earn your college degree, that the next generation will be better off economically as compared to the prior generation. This promise of social economic mobility is deeply rooted in our American psyche, and especially for first-generation college students and families of color who represent historically underserved populations in higher education. You know, this was the case, as I mentioned earlier, being raised by my grandparents as an African-American student. I decided to go to a small HBCU, and that's historically Black college and university in Huntsville, Alabama. I went to that place because, again, I felt like I needed to see people that looked like me, that understood my culture at the time and some of the things that the world was going through. There were faculty there were administrators there that, again, looked like me. You know, I dared to dream, and I tell you, and again, I can still see my grandmother on my shoulder here talking to me, the importance of getting an education. I have 4 degrees, so, and I'm still in school now, so, but having 4 degrees inclusive of a PhD. You know, after a long career of being a faculty member and an administrator in academia, and with a background in counseling, as was mentioned in my introduction, I serve as the first Black and female president of Bloomfield College. And it was mentioned earlier about being a PBI, predominantly Black institution, and a Hispanic serving institution. Those are federal designations. And most people don't understand that in New Jersey, there are no HBCUs. And to be a PBI, you have to have over 1,000 students. You have to have, again, 40% of your population has to be African American and low income. With that designation, we are allowed to get some additional funding because most of our students are under-resourced. Most of my students are dealing with food insecurity or housing insecurity, quite a few of them. So with those designations that were mentioned, we can seek additional funding to deal with the food insecurity and the housing insecurity. We have some other grants too as well to help with research and maybe going to graduate school. I think it was Kate who mentioned that she's an alum of Bloomfield College. Bloomfield College is 150 plus years old. It actually started off as the German Theological Seminary, founded by the Presbytery of Newark. And you know, most people don't understand that it's a Presbyterian school, but we have a solid liberal arts foundation now, and it has evolved. We actually have about 1,200 students and more than 50 academic programs. We are D2 athletics as far as the NCAA is concerned, and we have tons of co-curricular clubs and organizations. The majority of our students come from Essex County, like Newark, East Orange, West Orange. I'm still trying to figure out all these oranges you all have here in New Jersey. I'm like, what's up with the oranges? But anyway, that's a whole nother story. They come from Bloomfield, Jersey City, and Patterson as well. So, you know, again, majority of the students come from New Jersey. They stay in New Jersey. As again was mentioned too, we have one of the highest rates and success rates here of moving our students from the 5th quintile to the 2nd quintile as far as economic mobility. I recently just had 3 computer science students to graduate. And those students, when they graduated, they're making now over $100,000. Just think about that for a second. As I mentioned earlier, the median family income is just 32. So when you get the students to graduate and get a job, making 6 figures, financial literacy, the whole system is transformed at this particular point in time, and helping them manage that and how to, again, give back to their community, because when much is given, much is required, right? Also mentioned that we were, for the 3rd year in a row, we have been seen as one of the top institutions in the nation for that social economic mobility. That is a big thing. Again, think about my demographics. The college is known for, again, its quality higher education. As I mentioned, we educate some of the poorest students in the country. And, you know, again, the students learn how to navigate higher education. They struggle with the basic needs, health, family health, economic obligations. And when the pandemic hit, it really, really hit my student population. If you remember the news and start thinking about what happened in the Newark area and really the tri-state area, those populations of demographics of my students, it was disproportionately impacted by the virus. I will tell you, in one semester, I lost 300 students. Now, if you equate 300 students in a dollar amount, every 58 students is $1 million. Okay, so again, we lost millions of dollars, but more importantly, we lost the students because they had to stay home. They had to take care of family members, siblings. They had to work in some cases. A lot of cases, my students are working 1 to 2 jobs. And so what could we do to help them? You know, we threw laptop computers at them. We tried to give them resources. But one of the things we did not account for at the time was that the infrastructure for the Wi-Fi simply was just not up to par like it should have been. So, you know, again, you think sometimes you're giving people resources and support, but if you give them things that they can't actually use, really going back to your title of your group, is it really ethical? Is it really moral at that point? Because I can have this shiny computer sitting in a box, but if I can't use it, what good is that for me, right? So we had to come up with other ways. We kept a lot of our students on campus as a result of, again, the housing insecurities and the food insecurities. And they had to be in their room, but they had access to Wi-Fi. I know that sounds kind of awful, but that was just the reality of the situation that we found ourselves. You know, the college, when I first came as president, I knew that the college had been struggling. And you've probably heard about this in the news. And they had been struggling for a while with enrollment going down. And when, again, as I mentioned with the pandemic, it really, really impacted us. And I knew as the college president that we could not continue the way that we were going without help. So back in October in 2021, I made a public announcement that said that either we needed a major philanthropic partner to give us a whole lot of money, or we really needed another academic institution to really come in and to help us move forward. Now, this was, as I said, a risky decision to announce publicly, because you will know that a lot of institutions out there are struggling right now, but they don't publicly say it. Again, maybe because my background is in counseling and also being raised by my grandmother, I was not going to suffer in silence, and I was not going to bury my head in the sand and feel as if I was the only one that could fix the problem. It really needed to be a village, and we really needed the village to pitch in and to help. And so I made the announcement. I made the announcement that I need you to help me help these students realize their dreams of earning a college degree and advancing socioeconomically. Now, this transparency, as I said, was quite risky, yet everyone believed that it was the right thing to do, and we went public. As a result of that, I did a lot of different presentations and, you know, went into the social media. I did TikTok. I've done some of everything that I've learned how to do over these last couple of years. And as a result of that, we had over 30 institutions across the United States reach out and say they wanted to help us. Of that 30, I said, okay, you can, you know, talk a good talk. Now I need you to walk the walk, right? So if you're really interested in helping us, I need you to submit a proposal telling me 2 things that were very, very important. One, we wanted to keep the name Bloomfield College. The second thing was, though, we wanted to be true to our mission. And what I mean by that is, again, the mission of the students that we serve. Not every student, I'm a mother of 6, and of those, 5 of them are daughters. I always say God had a sense of humor when he gave me 5 girls, because I was a student athlete and playing with dolls was never my thing. So he gave me real dolls, I guess, to play with. And so, you know, again, looking at that, I have one daughter who went to University of Texas, 60,000 students. I have 2 of my daughters that went to small institutions that only had maybe like 1,200 students. Each one of them were thriving in different environments. And I know that not every student is going to be successful at a large institution, right? So when we start looking at mission and fit in Bloomfield College fits a certain demographic of size, of experience, and we wanted to continue that mission. Well, lo and behold, we had, as I mentioned, 8 institutions submit proposals, and my neighbor right down the street, Montclair State University, was the one who stepped up. They have a brand new president there. He just came from Arizona State University. And what I love about Arizona State University is that they're very innovative. They look at ways of involving the community, making sure, again, they're conscious of the culture. And they came and visited our campus with the new president, and they were very, very impressed. We were very impressed with Montclair State too as well, because I don't know how many of you know that Montclair State University is also a Hispanic serving institution. So their commitment to, again, traditionally underserved student populations, it was already present there. And so again, it made that partnership seem like a lifeline, and it really is a lifeline for us. We're currently working on a permanent strategic relationship with Montclair State University, and we're very excited. We're hoping, again, that by June of 23, we will have this partnership finalized. And what's so ironic about it is that we're getting ready in May of 2023, celebrating our 150th commencement. So all of this timing, I think I say people in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, is like this timing, this reason, this moment that I came all the way from San Antonio, Texas, and to be with this community, it was the right thing. And I think I was the right person, honestly, with my counseling background, to bring this to fruition. I say that too because, again, with all the loss that has happened, I've had one student lose 9 family members as a result of that virus. I did weekly vlogs, we call them, video, blogs type things, just to stay in touch and to let people know that they care. The community right now, and I think even the world at large, is experiencing a mental health crisis that they're coming out of, still just grappling with what we've gone through for the last 2.5 years, the loss of connection, the loss of being around people. Even at this event last night, it was like this great festive moment. And we hope, again, as someone mentioned earlier, that we come out okay, because we were all gathered in this room together, is that just the excitement of being together again, it was just palpable. So anyway, moving back to the story of Bloomfield College, I also made some pleas to the government, the state legislature. And as a result of that, they gave us some additional funding, $12.5 million, to help support Bloomfield College as we work through this potential historic partnership with Montclair State. I'm pleased to announce that we will be continuing, and this is a big deal, because again, we're going to be coming, hopefully the plan is to create Bloomfield College of Montclair State University. And our goal is to have this merger done and completed, like I said, by the end of June. Over the next, several months, we still have a lot of work in front of us. Our blessings are many, as you were talking earlier about your joys and some trials. This has been extremely stressful. Words cannot express. I think I've gained 30 pounds somewhere in there from all of this. Lost some more hair that I'm trying to kind of keep control over. But in all of that, though, knowing that this college is going to continue in serving our students, I have no words for it. Our deepest concern has been and continues to be our students, because going back to what I was saying earlier, the power of having a college degree and how it can not only transform that student's life, but that whole family system, again, it's phenomenal. Encouraging and motivating students to dare to dream beyond what they had previously known, that is what a Bloomfield College education can do. And we have something that's called the Bloomfield College Lift, and our motto is write your own story. And so, as I kind of wrap up my comments today, it goes back to, again, when I mentioned all those things about my students and about them being, having housing insecurity or food insecurity or the median family income. A lot of people look at that from a deficit model. But I will tell you, I'm going to flip it a little bit, because I'm a glass half full person. I see resiliency. I see giftedness. I see tenacity in these young people and their families pursuing higher education. And my job as president, and again, my responsibility, because with that comes responsibility, is helping them fulfill those dreams. Background matters, representation matters, me as a female, me as an African-American female, for them to be able to see that, you know, someone being raised by their grandmother and also having at one point dealt with food insecurity. If I can become a college president, then surely you can become whatever you want, putting in the hard work that you need to do to get to that goal. So I'm asking you to keep us in your thoughts as we persevere. We must stay vigilant in everything that we're doing. These students have grit above and beyond. I see it every day. And I know, again, goes back to my responsibility and the title of my thought today: when much is given, much is required. Thank you. This is my vocation, and I absolutely love my job. Any questions does anyone have?
We're going to thank you, Dr. Evans. Kate is
Wow.
going to come back to the podium. Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Evans. That was great. Wow. Well, I'm sure there are people who have questions. I have one question that I had for a while that I was going to ask you. And I know somewhere along the line when I was reading about you and your accomplishments, it was mentioned that there is a distinction between historically Black institutions, such as the ones we know about, Howard University and so on, and predominantly Black or minority institutions. And I just wondered if you would explain the distinction between those.
Most definitely. So there can never, ever be any more HBCUs. Okay. These were established before, I think it is 1968. So any school after that time will be called a predominantly Black institution if they have 40% more of their students that are Black and over 1,000 students at their institution. So again, just the H in historical, meaning that you had to have been established before the 60s to get that designation. And so that's really the difference. And actually we have some HBCUs that are only now 7% Black. Okay, so you've kind of had the flip there as well. But because they were established before that time, and when they were established, they were historically Black, they get to keep the federal designation of being called an HBCU.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Good.
Well, I'm sure there are people here who do have questions, and I will have people in the room. Okay, we're going to alternate between here and people on Zoom. So we'll start by taking questions from two people here in the room. David has a question.
Yeah, thanks. Dr. Evans, I was really struck by your comment about how Bloomfield College is an engine of economic mobility. And the reason it struck me was because I went to a school that had a similar effect on people, though very different than Bloomfield. I went to a large state college in California. We were a commuter school. Mm-hmm. I never really thought of the place as an engine of economic mobility, but a few years ago, I read a study by some academics who were looking at what colleges are the most successful at bringing people into another economic class. And there was my school, Cal State Los Angeles, as one of the top schools. And I was flabbergasted by that. And I have to tell you, for the first time, it actually made me quite proud of my association with the school, because I thought of it as, just a pedestrian commuter school, did okay by me. Mm-hmm. So my question is this. When you hear about colleges and universities in the United States, no, you never hear about that in the news, never. Maybe in some particular ethnic or economic communities you do, but I never hear about that. Right. But it does seem to me that is one of the most important functions of a college or university, is to help people get ahead, not to help them become the next Aristotle. Nothing against philosophers. So I wonder if you would just comment on that and talk about what, other schools that do that and how that might be encouraged across the nation.
I totally agree with what your whole statement, and then the question at the end of how we can tell that story more so. And I think I talk about it a lot with my group or demographic of students, because again, it's so stark. As I mentioned, with them, the median family income being so low, and then just one person getting a degree and say making 50,000 or making 60,000, or, the computer science I mentioned making six figures here. That's so significant. And again, I tell the story too here in New Jersey, because most of my students don't leave the state. A lot of colleges have this thing called out migration. I don't know if you're familiar with that. They'll come into the state or they'll get their degree and then they'll leave and go somewhere else. So the investment of taxpayers into that institution or into that student is seen as being wasted. Well, my students, culturally, generationally, they stay in New Jersey. And that was one of the things I talked about when I met with the legislators. You need to invest in these young people because they stay. Unfortunately, my students can see the city right across the water here. They've never even been, So we take them into field trips. We want them to explore and we want them to have more of a global, multicultural experience, but they're just content being here in New Jersey. And I always talk about New Jersey is this big, right? Coming from Texas. And so, but the connection to family and giving back, it's a big deal. So, this is a story that needs to be shared more about that impact. Again, with the lower income individuals, is seen more starkly, not as much from middle class to middle class, but definitely with the demographic of my students that I serve.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else here in the room that, Susan has a question.
Hi again. My comment is Bloomfield College is an excellent college. One of my family friends, Camillo, went there. He became a director of a nursing home, and then afterwards he entered the Marines and went abroad for a war, and he returned. My opinion, it's not the brand name, it's what's inside that counts. I know that most people at Shala want to go to Harvard and Princeton, Yale because of the name, but people who go to smaller colleges are people who want love, people who, in my opinion, high souls, people who don't care for the hustle and bustle of heaven, people who want to have rather stay sweet and low. They go to no-name colleges. I went to Amherst College, and I don't regret it, but in my mind, I needed to stay small. I needed to go to Manhattan College in New York.
So just to follow up on your comments, as I mentioned earlier, some of the small schools, that's important. Where do you feel as if you fit? You can be connected. I mentioned one of my daughters who had, she got a degree in biomedical engineering. She had classes with 600 students in one class. They were a number, they were not a name. At Bloomfield College, we know your name, your grandmother's name, your aunt, someone else probably that went there. Sometimes it's a good thing, maybe not a good thing, but we know you. We know when you don't show up. And so, those connections, and that's why people choose a small campus sometimes where they won't be lost and that they will be seen. And that's what we try to do, because 52% of my students are first generation. They haven't learned how to navigate higher ed in some cases, and helping even their parents navigate and to understand about financial literacy is working with the whole system. And I agree with your comments.
Okay. All right, I guess it's time to switch to Zoom. Susan?
Thank you, Kate. And I'm going to remind our Zoomland audience that you should please raise your hand electronically, because I cannot see everyone physically. I'd like to invite Diane Doherty to please unmute.
Okay.
You got it. Okay.
I just want to congratulate Dr. Evans on all the work that you've done to keep Bloomfield College alive. I am a lifelong Bloomfield resident, except for a short stint living in Manhattan while I went to Teachers College. But my question is kind of basic. How can you involve more the community of Bloomfield into this sustaining Bloomfield College, and maybe even, I know there are students that are homeless, and how can we help some of those students?
Thank you, Diane. You're right. Again, we're just, I was talking to my dean of students. She went with me to this event last night, and students that have to stay over the holidays because they don't have anywhere else to go, or, looking for places even during the summer. We work a lot with Tony's Kitchen as far as providing food, dealing with the food insecurity, and they've been phenomenal. Of course, they do work with the food bank, but again, that's been one of our resources. We are going to be talking more about this and developing, Diane, some other strategies to help our students be successful beyond and working with the community, especially now with Montclair State being involved. And it's easier now for us to do that because we'll be becoming what's called a public institution. Right now, we're private, and we were originally religiously affiliated. And that caused some limitations on public support that you could get. But now, as we move into this new partnership, merger with Montclair State, it will be more of a public institution. So therefore, us qualifying for additional community support and aid will be eligible for.
Okay, I had read about, I guess it was in the Independent Press or something, about the danger of Bloomfield College closing, and then never heard anything again until now. I'm hearing all the wonderful things that you have done. There are different groups in Bloomfield, like Citizens of Bloomfield and others, that perhaps people could be involved, even to help a student who might need a winter coat. I mean, sometimes when I go past the college, I see kids, I'm like, what, where are their coats?
Right.
It's cold out. Do you have anything like that, or is that in the works?
That is definitely in the works. We just got a call again last week on coats and umbrellas because, it was raining the last few days of last week too. And I've given away more umbrellas because kids walking around cold and no umbrellas. So we do have different organizations that are giving us those types of items: coats, hats, and umbrellas, and gloves as
And you
well.
may put some of that information. I don't know if there's a way to put that in so I can maybe get some of my neighbors to donate some of
Sure.
that.
Yes, most definitely. I can put my email in the chat, and if you can email me, then I can reach out to you that way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
So
very much.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have Kirk Collier. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, Dr. Evans, you mentioned the drop in rolls during the pandemic, and we've heard that nationwide a lot of youth have disappeared from the academic rolls, especially nationwide. So many youth have dropped out of college, or they're not coming back when they are not even applying. And we're also seeing a decrease in the number of young men applying for college programs. And just want to see if you, how are you addressing that at Bloomfield College, and what you have seen personally, and what is the role that an organization like an ethical society can help kind of close that gap between getting the youth even interested in enrollment. So we have our summer youth employment program. We try and talk to the kids about applying for college to help them understand how financial aid works, that kind of thing. But are there additional things that we could be doing as well?
Kurt, again, nationwide, I think there's like 1.6 million students just dropped off from the roll, so to speak, disappeared from college during the pandemic. We also know too, in the Northeast, we're coming up on what we call a demographic cliff, where I joke and say people in the Northeast stop having babies. And so as a result of that, the enrollment, the pool is getting smaller and smaller and smaller for all these institutions to draw from. In New Jersey, we have about 14 private institutions. Now, of course, in that private institution, you have schools like Princeton. They don't have anything to worry about. Seton Hall, they don't have anything to worry about. But the ones like Caldwell, myself, St. E's, Drew, the smaller ones, we're going to be in trouble. And you've probably seen about and heard about it in the news. Again, so finding that partnership, that's going to be critically important just for those schools to sustain. Now, going back to an initiative, one of the largest deficits we have right now is African-American males. We've seen a major decrease in them pursuing post-secondary. We do have some grants and funds. And again, it's focused on African-American males, but again, I'm a Black and brown campus, and males, period. We have certain initiatives for additional support for them, mentors, programming focused on them, jobs, having diversity in our schedules, because most of our students, again, are working. When are we offering the classes? Hybrid. The good thing about the pandemic was it got faculty not being afraid to teach online, because some faculty, and again, my students are kind of high touch. They, you want to be able to see you, feel you, touch you kind of thing. But it taught them that we can actually have a good educational experience online, and this is how you can do it. So, going back to what you can do, I think too, maybe looking at having events on our campus. Most people don't know what they don't know. And they think that post-secondary is not attainable for them. But through summer programming, we start now bringing elementary school kids on campus for them to see that, it's all about relationships. It's all about being able to see a place that they can fit in, someone cares about them. I try, whenever there's a group on campus, to personally go and meet and talk with them, for them to see me, right? And just having events on campus has really been an added bonus. And I think as we move forward, trying to be more engaged with our community and inviting them, and me going out again, sorry I couldn't be with you all today, that's important. It's about relationships, and those matter when people can see you and know that you're a good person, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Kate, we do have several more hands online, but back to you for a couple from the room.
Oh, okay. Is there anyone here who has, oh, okay, we have a couple here in the room. Orion, I guess, and then Elaine. Okay, first.
Sort of as a follow-up to David's question or point, it's wonderful that you are helping your students achieve growth in their economic and social status. But what we hear about more in the news is how much it costs to go to college, and the debt that's piled up as a result of a college education. With your population being so from limited means, how do you fund their education?
Very good question. One, we're the lowest price private institution in New Jersey. But with that, a lot of people don't understand too, you have something called discount rates with private institutions. What is a really dollar amount out of pocket? With the median family income I mentioned earlier, almost 90% of my students, if not more, qualify for financial aid. They're Pell eligible, meaning they get a certain type of funding that's sponsored by the federal government. So through getting Pell, that's one avenue. Also, because of their economic status, they get something called TAG, okay? And that's Tuition Assistance Grant that's sponsored by the state. Pell is sponsored by the federal government. TAG is sponsored by the state of New Jersey. With the TAG, I think it's about almost $13,000 a year that they qualify for. So the reality is most of my students may have to come up with maybe $1,000, somewhere in between that, because of their high needs economically. And then there are Parent Plus loans, that are out there. Now, I will tell you though, most of my families are hesitant about taking out any loans, which is probably a good thing, but we try to educate them. Again, it goes back to the financial literacy. If you get this loan and you actually use the loan, because there have been some situations where people have gotten loans and used them to sustain their household and not necessarily for their education, we have to, again, educate the importance of that through the financial literacy of how that by the time you finish your degree, this is where you'll be and this is what you will earn. So, it's recruiting them, retaining them, and graduating them, but also helping them get a job at the end. It's nothing worse than to go through all of this experience and not be able to get a job when you're at the end of attaining your degree. So hopefully that answered some of your questions there. But I will tell you too, now going with Montclair State, we'll be going to their tuition model, which will hopefully be even better for our students because it'll be a lower tuition rate. And again, we'll qualify for additional state funding through the Garden State Guarantee. I don't know if you've heard about that, but it's been in the news in the last 18 months. And now my students will qualify for that as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dr. Evans. Elaine
Yeah,
has a
this is
question?
actually a follow-up to the two previous questions about undocumented students. I'm sure you have undocumented students and the challenges there because they're not eligible for some of the government grants. And also, if there are any pending legislation or anything like that where we could send letters in support that would be helpful to those students, we could get our social action committee on it.
Yeah, definitely. So there are some, how can I say this? Some strengths and concerns in regards to undocumented students. And I say the strength part of it is, yes, we definitely do. We have students there. And one of the positives of being a private institution, I used to work in San Antonio. And if you know where San Antonio is, the 7th largest city in the United States, a lot of people come from what we call the Valley, come from Mexico, and trying to get an education, to be perfectly honest, and very little support. We do have what we call institutional aid that we provide, and that's this additional funding that, depending on where a student, how they qualify for that aid, that again, they can be undocumented. Am I making sense with this? But there are additional funds we can use for those specific students that may have actually graduated. I had one student recently graduate from a high school in New Jersey, but still, again, they could not qualify for any of the federal aids that are out there. So, we try to come up with funding for them. We have a large group of students that are from Dominican Republic, from South America, again, just trying to get them the support that they need. That's a constant struggle. I don't know of any pending legislation right now. I think that they were trying to work with the Pell, getting them to be able to qualify for the Pell. We're trying to get double Pell funding, to be perfectly honest, because again, I don't know how many of you have any children, or even qualify for Pell, but Pell increases as you go through your academic, from being a freshman, sophomore, junior, up to senior. You get a little bit more. It's not a lot, $3,000. Again, you think about that, it's not a lot of money, but every little bit helps, to be perfectly honest. So, if I come up with any additional legislation or I find out that there is some that's out there, I will definitely reach out to you all for your support.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Evans.
Sure.
We have 2 hands raised online. We'll start with Pam. Please unmute yourself. Trying to spotlight you. There you go.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Evans. Wonderful, wonderful program that you offered us this morning. I do have a very sensitive question that I would like to ask you. Mm-hmm. Being that many of the students out there do not have the really high foundation of learning. In other words, many may not be able to do well on SATs or actually meet entrance programs. How does Bloomfield deal with that? In other words, and how successful are these not as well prepared students in your program?
So we're considered a test optional school, okay? And a lot of schools are going to that now. Even more so when COVID hit, people weren't able to do the SATs or the ACTs or those types of things. Really, research has shown that those are not good predictors of success in post-secondary. The number one best predictor of success is your GPA from high school. How well did you do in high school in the classes that you attended? And so we've been using this test optional has been with Bloomfield, I know, for probably about 5 years, at least. We don't offer developmental classes. We offer additional support systems, that again, we do test and we try to get your reading and writing level and your math level. And then we offer a summer program before your freshman year that you come and you spend time on campus and you actually get credit for this to, again, kind of levelize you as far as those skills are concerned. And you spend about a month on campus just getting ready. Again, as I mentioned, a lot of my students are first generation, having that experience of being on campus, hitting those areas that need to be strengthened head on, that's what we focus on, getting them ready to move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. Richard, please unmute yourself.
Good morning, Dr. Evans.
Good morning, Richard.
Hi, I knew I knew nothing about Bloomfield College other than the name. And your presentation was wonderful, and it lifted my heart to know that there's an institution with a mission such as it is, and that you are leading it. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Thank you.
My question to you, you're probably pretty busy. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I live in my head a lot, and I worry about national politics and other things. Like maybe you don't have time for it, but maybe you have some insight.
Yes, I do.
This way that some people in politics are people that already are wealthy, but seem to think that they need even more and more money all the time. They seem to not want people to be able to get the education at universities, to make it harder. They're worried about the ideas that are fostered there. I don't think they would worry about your institution that much since it's practical, but they worry about liberalism and all this stuff. And I was wondering if in any way it has hurt your mission by some of the things they're trying to do, or some of the legislation they have passed nationally. In New Jersey, I know we're pretty good, so I'm not too worried.
Right.
But just on a national level, if you have any worries about things that might happen, or if you have any insights to how we can stop this thing where they don't want, maybe it's bigotry sometimes, or just they don't understand the socioeconomic differences of low class versus high class, whatever, to allow people to get a good education and it to be affordable, and so they can grow. And I love that your college does that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't even know how to start to answer.
Yeah, it's a big question.
Only because, again, you're right about Bloomfield. It's kind of an oasis or a safe place for my students and demographics that I serve. And we try to do what we call being work ready, that we are a liberal arts institution, but by the time that they're in their experience with us, that they're work ready. But they also have to be, again, culturally aware and understand the world in which they live in. With the whole thing with the George Floyd, and we have a Black Lives Matter campaign, we do Juneteenth, we do all those kinds of things on campus to make them, again, how they navigate their environment. That's critically important for them. Or, when they go, how to dress for success, how to go in an interview, how to have that dinner with your, doing the interview, all those kinds of things are important. We have these hard conversations about critical race theory. Critical race theory has been around for decades. It's like it was just invented last week. No, it was not. I taught it back in the 80s. And why is that important? Well, people say, well, I don't see color. Well, if you say you don't see color, then you don't see me. Okay. Or, if you say, I actually went down to DC about 3 weeks ago. It was a week before Thanksgiving, and met with a bunch of legislators to talk again about being a PBI and an HSI. And one of the legislators from South Carolina came in, because again, it was a bipartisan trip. And we were visiting with all different types of people on both sides of the aisle. And he came in, he says, I don't want to talk nothing about critical race theory. I don't want to talk nothing about women's rights. And, again, we're sitting there and it's like, okay, I just think people need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. And I'm sitting there, just looking at him and thinking this is truly a Twilight Zone moment. Surely this man did not just walk in here and say this, because all of us were African-American presidents, for one. Let's just start with that. And again, my grandmother would have rolled over if I sat there and didn't say a word. And I said, well, if you want to talk about people, again, that really are trying to get their education and trying to, again, how to navigate in this world, then that's what we're talking about today, right? But it's just the mentality, going back to what you say, is like, honestly, you feel like, what planet am I on? Because some of it simply makes no sense whatsoever. Someone mentioned about the election. Now I'm getting into politics here, but thank God there's a God, because it could have gone the other way, and it would truly insanity that's out there sometimes. So we try it again on our campus. We do talk about these things. We try to process these things. We can't, even understanding the word liberalism, what does it actually mean, and how is it operationalized in people's lives? That don't have food, don't have a house, trying to get their education, working 2 to 3 jobs. Come on, y'all. It's unreal sometimes.
I come from a very low-income background myself, but my parents, like your grandmother, thought that education was extremely important.
Yes.
Unfortunately, my parents also had very hard lives, and they were abusive. So the only thing that we could halfway agree on was the fact that I should get a good education, because then maybe I'd survive in the world. And that then they would be less abusive when I did well in school. So I ended up being lucky and getting into Princeton for a variety of reasons. And I actually graduated cum laude, but I was so focused on my education, I didn't see any of the rest of the world. And I'm still trying, even in my late age now, to learn to see the world and people better. And I know what you mean. It's not from a Black perspective, but my parents were so abusive that sometimes I feel people don't see me because they just don't understand how bad it could have been.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Richard.
Thank you for everything you shared.
Thank you. And we have Kate go on. Back to you.
Hey, well, okay. We have more hands in the room going up. So I guess, do we have time? We have time for more questions, and all right, so we're good. Diane, and over here we also have, yes.
After those big questions, I have something a little more quotidian, but I'm very curious how, given your college's, ambitions versus your economic resources, what role do sports play in your community? Is it a chore to keep that afloat? Do you see it as wonderful? I'd be curious about your interpretation of the role of sports in the world of college.
Oh, okay. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I was a student athlete. You might see on this side where I graduated from. Can you see that? If it says the University of Alabama,
Yes.
that should tell you what the #1 sport is at that school. All I can say is Roll Tide. And then, just having been a student athlete, I think athletic departments are extremely important on campuses when they're done right. Now, I will tell you, I worked as a counselor for some of the athletes at the University of Alabama, and some of them were just not prepared as well as they should have been. I worked in a program called Student Support Services that provided resources for some of the football players. And I had one student I'll never forget. He says, my only reason to be here is I want to get, play football or whatever, professionally in the NFL. I went, baby, unless you do well in school, you couldn't even read the contract they were giving you to play football in the NFL. So let's start with the basic and get that done. Now, having said all that, we have about 300 of our students at Bloomfield College that are student athletes. They have the highest GPAs on campus. I know also too that sometimes you need a carrot to get people into seeing post-secondary. And for some of these students, being on an athletic team is that carrot to say, okay, I'll go and pursue higher education. They become student athletes, they get a degree, and then they go. They don't end up in the NBA or the NFL or the National Baseball League, but they've used this as an opportunity to get their education, and they get additional scholarships. I'm the president that enjoys athletics. Is it a chore? We do offer scholarships. Now, there are different divisions of the NCAA. You have D1, D2, D3. D3, Montclair State is a D3 school. Being a D3 school, you don't give scholarships. We give very small scholarships and no one gets what's called a full ride, okay? Because I mentioned earlier, I do have kids that are coming from South America, France, because we have soccer, baseball again. We have, I think it's like 14 different sports that we offer. The typical basketball. We even have a esports team as well, playing, the gaming type teams. And so we just started that 2 years ago. We had over 80 students try out for esports. Okay, that's something that's up and coming. And so, trying to wrap up answering your question, I think athletics is very important. I enjoy it. I try not to get thrown out of the game sometimes. I'm that president, what? That screams and yells. But it's a good draw. I think it's a positive.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Mary Ann.
That's not what I was going to say. Okay, well, I'll try to remember. I was very fortunate as a resident of New York City. You're entitled to free education at Hunter College. So I got a degree from Hunter College, free. And then, fortunately, as a nurse, they were giving government scholarships because they wanted more and more nurses to be highly educated. And I got a nice, totally free master's degree from the government. Wow, I really believe in that kind of support. Because I got it, and I would love everybody else to be able to get this wonderful higher education. It's very broadening. It's I've been able to have so many communications with so many people on my level in education and in nursing and et cetera. So I really, really, really believe in a free higher education, if at all possible, from your government.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Again, having 6 kids, I wish it was free because I would be a lot richer if I didn't have to do with that, pay their tuition or whatever. But, having said that, one of my master's degrees actually was paid for, excuse me, by the state of Alabama as a rehabilitation counselor. They paid, again, for you to go into the field. And for every year, you had to have a year of service that you gave back, right? And so I've been kind of pushing that here in New Jersey, that we need to start looking at, again, the free tuition model with a payback period of time. Because again, it's an investment in the individual, then the individual needs to give back. Kind of the much is given, much is required, right? So if I'm giving you these resources, how will you stay within the community and still support the community by giving back to it through your service? Now, you still get paid once you graduate, but you have to stay a period of time in the community that helps support you. And so, that worked well for me. I even got a stipend when I was getting my graduate degree, as well as getting my tuition paid and support for my books. So, I'm hoping that, again, with the Garden State Guarantee, we're trying to get to that point of tuition being free, but we're not there yet. But I still think that there should be some expectation that if we give you the dollars, that there should be something given back.
Okay. Ron has a question.
Actually, I have 2 questions, if I may, real quick ones. Probably know the answer to this first one, but student debt has been crushing students' lives after they leave college. Where do you stand on the Biden administration's attempts to forgive certain amounts of student debt? And 2, democracy is under threat now, and the future of our democracy really depends very much on people who are attending college at the present time. What do you see in your community as far as student civic awareness, student political activity? Thanks.
Going back to Biden and his student loan forgiveness, again, being a mother, I see the crushing debt. I have one of my daughters, I call her knucklehead, even though she's brilliant. She decided to go to California. Someone mentioned that they went to school in California to get her graduate degree. She owes over 6 figures in student loans right now, but she's in public service. She works for Food Corps. I don't know if you're familiar with Food Corps. It's kind of a branch of AmeriCorps, and they deal with childhood obesity and nutrition. And she's one of the 1% of African Americans that are registered dietitians in the United States. Very small, right? But when you look at all the food disparities that are out there, they're usually in the Black and brown and the low income health disparities that are out there that usually in that population. I hope she gets some relief for it because she's giving back in service and she's trying to transform childhood obesity, right? But the school that she went to, they had this dual program of a master's in public health and her becoming an RD, and there were only 3 in the country. They had this combination, so she went to California to get it, okay? Then I have another daughter who's a PhD teaching in Auburn, right? She still owes money, mainly for graduate, you know? So again, but she's giving back. She was an elementary school teacher. Teachers don't get paid what they should get paid. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. But having taught from the cradle to the grave, I've taught elementary, middle, and high school all the way up to doctoral students. I know the pay inequities that are out there related to certain professions. So I think if we're looking at the student loan payback, I think it should be based on income in areas in which people got their degrees. If you are, again, my brother and sister-in-law are physicians making, you know, $500,000, no, I don't think your loan should be forgiven back. And if you are an elementary, especially middle school teacher, and you have student loans, that's to me like service. You need to be paid. That's almost like combat pay in some cases, depending on where you're teaching. There needs to be some forgiveness of the student loans there. So I have mixed emotions about it, I guess, as you can tell. But I think it's something that needs to be nuanced a little bit more and really thought through. So, you know, that's the answer to the first part of your question. The second question in regards to just how we educate our students, honestly, we have all the clubs and the groups, and we have speakers that come on campus dealing with where we are as far as our democracy is concerned. We were specific in dealing with the Black Lives Matter situation that, you know, that continues to happen, and my students are continuing to deal with because of the demographics of who we are at Bloomfield College. Their awareness of having the talk of how you navigate when you're working, living, walking down the street. I had one of my neighbors, someone mentioned they lived in Bloomfield. You know, I had neighbors complaining because the students were, well, they came to my office. He says, your students are too loud, right? We live in what's called an open campus, meaning that we live within a community as far as the campus is concerned. So I said, my students are too loud because they're living in an apartment, you know, down the street. And he showed me a video of my students walking, and the students, soccer players, they were laughing, right? Laughing, walking down the street. And I looked at the video and I went, so you're coming to my office showing me this video of my students walking down the street. They weren't cursing. They were literally just laughing. And this is what they're too loud and they're disturbing me, right? And I sit there, and again, we talk to the students, telling them to be careful, to not be so loud because we're in a community. But goodness gracious, you move next to a college. You know, we try to make sure our music is not too loud after 10 o'clock, those kinds of things, and we have parties on the quad or whatever, but you move next to a college campus. But I think sometimes it does go back to race. It goes back to age in some cases as well too. And we have to help our students learn how to navigate that. We have a student chapter of the NAACP that's on campus. We do a lot of different things as far as being active, getting out to vote. We have voter drives on campus. So again, kind of a long-winded answer to the question, but we try to get them to be engaged in the real world, even though too, a lot of them are just surviving in their world.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Evans. I guess we are going to conclude now. That was just great. I'm so glad I had the idea. and I would like to say, I'm sure I can think of other things to ask, but at the moment I wanted to wish your class of 2023, the 150th class, much luck and success in their careers, as I was a member of the 100th class from 1973. Oh, wow. So that was sort of a hallmark for the school that year. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm sure everyone appreciates being able to get to know you and ask you questions, and hopefully this will only be the first time. Maybe we'll have another time when you will
Part two.
present to us as to how things are going and how we may help you in the future.
Awesome.
Okay, thanks. I guess we are done, and I'm thanking the speaker, the greeters. Oh, announcements. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, turn the page.